know, because we don't have all the evidence. That's one of the biggest problems, is that history is a process of gaining as many facts as possible in order to interpret the past as well as we possibly can. But we never know all the evidence. We never have all the evidence. And so new evidence comes to light, and so we have to change our history books. And so what exactly is history? It's based on research and the drawing of conclusions that are not always conclusive, right? And that's something that historians have to keep in mind, is that we don't know exactly what happened in the past, but this is our best guess. And so oftentimes we're actually building scenarios of the past and saying we think it happened this way, but it could have happened that way. That's what historical fiction is all about. So historical documents, archaeological evidence, and even scientific evidence are often not as reliable as we like them to be. All right, so this is a difficulty in how we teach the past and how we teach science. In most schools, we teach kids this line, right? Reality is not a line. We have to learn how to view history. We have to broaden our view of history so that we better understand not just what we know about the past, but also what we don't know about the past. All right, so we have limits to our interpretation of the evidence. We also have limits to the evidence we can gather, and we live in this little bubble called the present, and of course that little bubble is constantly moving along the line, but it doesn't mean that we actually understand what happened previously in the line. And so we find the same thing when we start thinking about the future. So a better way to think about the future is not along a line, which is what we normally do. We normally, economists are very good at this. They analyze the past to identify trends, and how, if those trends lead to the present, then we project them into the future. And hope like hell that those projections hold. Or if those projections don't look good, we hope like hell they don't hold. But very often, trends go in completely different directions. They stop out of nowhere. So like I said, economists are very good at this. In 2007, the economy was supposed to skyrocket. And then, of course, 2008 happens, and we get this global financial crisis, and everything falls apart. And now, in 2018, we think we've got everything put back together, and we think we've uncovered what made us go wrong. But the point is, in 2007, we followed from the present out to that expected future. And we were trying to prepare for this expected future when one of these other alternate futures actually hit and took us in a different direction. And so if you were relying on the economists' predictions, then your organization failed. But if you were paying attention to alternate scenarios and preparing a preferred future to achieve that, and you were paying attention to how scenarios could actually feed into your preferred future, then your organization had a better chance of succeeding. All right? I've actually been a business coach here in Hawke's Bay for the past couple of years. And so I've talked to a lot of business owners in the Bay. And I've only talked to a handful of business owners who said that the GFC never happened for them. It never affected their business. Now, whether that's because they were such a small business or whether they were so integral to the local economy that they couldn't fail, I'm not sure. But there were a lot of business owners who told me 2012 was a rough year. 2012, not because of the movie and not because of anything like that, but because that's when the GFC, the global financial crisis, began to affect our local economy. And the interesting thing to me on that is that a lot of times when I talk to people about the future here in Hawke's Bay, it's like, why do we need to think about the future? It's Hawke's Bay. Whatever happens on the other side of the world, it's going to get here in 5 to 10 years. We'll be well prepared. Well, the global financial crisis happened in 2008. Got to Hawke's Bay in about 2012, and most of the business owners that I've talked to, even the educated ones who got MBAs and everything else, were shocked. We've been talking about it for 4 years, and they were still shocked when their business got hit by this global financial crisis. Why is that? Because they weren't thinking about the future. They were still thinking in 2007 mindset. They were still thinking about this expected future. They were not thinking about alternate scenarios. So the reason that this happens so much, that people get shocked by the future, okay, some of you may have heard of Alvin Toffler in the book Future Shock. Maybe not. Maybe some of you might be a little too young for it, but go into a used bookstore, you'll probably find a copy, because even here in Hawke's Bay, I've noticed there's quite a few copies. What we teach is that the more certainty we can have, the greater confidence we can have in it. Right? This is how science works. This is how scientific history often works, not always. Because we start with a hypothesis. So we have very little certainty in a hypothesis. It's really just some crack brain idea. And so we have very little confidence in it. But the more evidence we gather, the greater confidence we can get. And so, for instance, a lot of people say, oh, the theory of evolution is just a theory. Well, actually, it's a theory that has a great deal of evidence behind it and has built up that theory quite a bit. Okay, why is it not a scientific law? Because we don't understand everything of it. Okay, but we still have very good confidence in it because all the evidence points to that. Or more evidence points to it than evidence points anywhere else. So with greater certainty comes greater confidence. And then, of course, once we begin to understand 100% of what's going on, then it becomes a scientific law. Now, thinking about the future has to work at the opposite, because that's thinking about the past, trying to gain certainty into the present. So let's think about the future. We go in the opposite direction. So we start with trends. The great thing about trends is that we can look at the past, we can connect the dots, and identify, okay, something seems to be going this way, and then we can project them. And the great thing about trends is we can apply numbers to them. And so we can be very certain about it, but we can't be very confident about it because other things happen, right? Like the global financial crisis. We didn't recognize a trend, some people did actually, but a lot of people didn't recognize a trend that was going to converge with that ideal expected future about the economy. So we go from trends, and we lower our certainty a bit in order to gain more confidence. We lower our certainty by creating scenarios, okay? And not just one or two scenarios, but actually we can create as many scenarios as we need to in order to fill up that view of the future. We have to broaden our view of the future, and the more we understand about what could happen, the greater confidence we can gain, because we have more understanding. Not necessarily more certainty, but at least we have more understanding of what could happen. And then, as we become less certain, we can gain more confidence because we're building strategies. Strategies are less certain because we don't know what the implications are going to be, right? At the end of the 19th century, the conventional wisdom was suggesting we should start mass-producing education, right? And that was the strategy that was put in place. They didn't understand that once they put that strategy in place, they were going to leave generations of people underprepared for reality. And so they didn't understand the implications. And this is part of the problem that today, when we start thinking, well, what's the next step in education? Well, we need to think about what the implications are of that. What's the best strategy? But we can still have better confidence because at least we have a path forward. So strategic foresight is all about improving decision making. So what exactly is strategic foresight? Well, it's a process for better understanding the future. It's based on research and drawing conclusions that are not conclusive. So with history, we're drawing conclusions that are rarely conclusive, and in this case, they're never conclusive, okay? Until, of course, the actual future does occur. So it's a set of multidisciplinary tools and methods for developing future forecasts upon which to base decisions. And who needs to gain the improvement? Who needs improvement on gaining? How should I phrase this? Who needs to make better decisions? Who in society? You. Yeah. Is it global corporations? Is it people who get master's degrees and doctorate degrees? Do those people need to learn how to make better decisions? Yeah, probably.
Most people believe that education prepares students for the future. Isn't it strange, therefore, that we never tell them about that future?
Before I took this course, I had a very streamlined view of what the future would be like. I guess when I pictured the future, I thought of new gadgets and technologies and cool flying cars, but I never really considered the major problems that our society would need to be prepared to confront.
It's like preparing them for a field trip, but not telling them where they're going. Getting on the bus, they know where they are going. In the classroom, perhaps not so much. That's why we have created a community called Teach the Future to introduce futures thinking into schools. That community includes teachers, administrators, students, their parents, and anyone who believes that teaching our young people about the future is important, if not critical, to their success in life.
For 18-year-olds, they're having to think about the future, and I don't think that's something they traditionally do in the sense that it's this structured, that there are people there who have been trained to help students pull out of themselves what they think the future is.
Teachers are challenged to teach the future because no one has taught them about the future either. So the first goal of Teach the Future is to prepare a set of useful and effective teaching materials that teachers can use to teach the future. We will hire teachers in the summer to create these materials.
So Dr. Bishop is actually the man who taught me. So he leads, or led, the master's degree program at the University of Houston, which was right outside the NASA, Houston, what's it called? NASA at Houston, okay? You know, Houston, we have a problem, it's that place. So they were actually getting students from the University of Houston and feeding them into NASA so that they could have bigger picture thinkers. So he left the University of Houston, and he said, look, teaching in a master's degree program is great, but why aren't people learning this younger? So that he and his daughter, who is a secondary school teacher, have developed, well, along with other teachers, by the way, secondary and even primary school teachers, have developed this futures thinking playbook. So it's a great way of building curriculum for getting students to think about the future in unconventional ways. So, since I got this degree program, since I started the degree program, back in 2007, whatever, I always wondered, why was this such a shock to me that people were studying this? Why was this such a shock to me that I didn't already know most of what I was learning? Because it felt like it was esoteric knowledge, like I was being indoctrinated into a secret society of people that knew something that the rest of society didn't. And it felt like this conspiracy theory. Well, future studies and strategic foresight are rarely taught below the graduate level. They're rarely practiced by smaller organizations. They're rarely applied to at-risk parts of society. What do I mean by that? Like, who asks the question, what's the future of the homeless? We're talking about the future of education. Well, what's the future of the homeless? Is it that they're going to get educated and leave homelessness? Or do we need to actually stop and consider people who are at risk? So who's more at risk by the future than the underprivileged? Is it the people who are running corporate organizations? Or is it the people who are underprivileged? And the truth is, understanding the future is actually quite simple. And it's quite simple to teach. It's transferable skills. There are a lot of skills that are quite technical and are not as transferable, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of skills that are transferable and can be taught at the primary level even, as well as the secondary level. All right, so what are some of this value? What's some of the value that you can gain from future studies? Well, it's going to improve critical thinking skills. It's going to improve systems thinking skills. Big history is going to improve systems thinking skills. What do I mean by systems thinking? Well, I was always taught that everything's connected, right? And in a large way, the Earth is a very complex system in which everything is connected. But actually mapping those connections and learning to recognize